What's up guys, it's Jordan here from SwitchWatch. Today we're going to review back in 1995 on the Nintendo Switch, and hang on a minute. Yeah, that's better, right? At least you can't see my crap hair. Anyways, we're going to see if back in 1995 is worth your hard-earned cash on the Nintendo Switch or not. Let's just dive straight into this one. The story for back in 1995 is a tale of a man trying to find out who he really is and what on earth is going on. Interdimensional beings have ravaged the city, and you attempt to journey to a tower in the distance where you have an urge to go. Along the way, you'll meet a couple of people, as well as face weird circumstances where you faint and wake up in different places, and it's clear that not all is what it appears to be. Just what is going on? You'll find notes littering around that will gradually explain before the ending segment where the real truth comes out. Is the story interesting? Well, I think it tries its best, but its limited scope, characters, and writing prowess make it a slightly generic experience compared to what it aspires to be. Heading into the gameplay, you can see what this game was inspired by. Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil all show themselves back in 1995. It's a survival horror game wanting to be from the 90s, which means tank controls and fixed camera angles aplenty. It's very faithful in that regard as you explore the decrepit, tight environments, dodging the nasties that lurk in them. While there are weapons in the game, it's not particularly an action-orientated game, as it's more about finding your way to the exit safely, reading notes, finding clues and keys. It's the very basic of basic that classic survival horrors are based on, but kind of misses the mark to make it wholly derivative. Environments are too small to get lost in, puzzles are few and far between, and it's not compelling enough to stop you from getting bored. Going from note to note does not hold your attention at all. The combat does liven things up somewhat in classic Resident Evil style. You'll pick up a wrench for melee attacks, then a pistol, and then finally a shotgun to defend yourself from the handful of enemies that populate this game. There's only around 5 varieties of enemies, and most of the major encounters happen at the end of the game. Most of the standard enemies in the rooms or corridors can be easily avoided despite your achingly slow walking pace. It's a short game, just like this review, like ridiculously short. You will finish the game completely in about an hour and a half with nothing left to do. No replay value at all. If you're looking for a game to sink some time into, this is not the one for you. This will be finished in just one daily commute. I know I've been quite merciless on this game already in such a short period of time, but it's more the fact that it's such a fantastic concept with such meager offerings. It's not terrible, just wholly mediocre. The game's intentions are good. I mean, I don't want to spoil the ending too much, but after the credits roll, you are treated to a sincere message from the pretty much sole developer of this game, who comes across as very sweet. For sure, it's a game made from the heart, but that doesn't immediately make it good, I'm afraid. It wants to be a game from 1995, but it doesn't hold a candle to the classics of that era. For the audio, we've got a mixed bag, trying to emulate the classics with unnerving tracks occasionally interrupting a deadly silence. The music itself is pretty well done. It feels authentic of the time, almost MIDI-esque. The sound effects leave something to be desired though, especially when there's no music playing and all you can hear are the repetitive sound effects of the footsteps. There is a bit of voice acting here, and my god is it gloriously awful in every possible way. Just as you would expect from a horror game in the mid-90s. I'm 90% sure that it's intentional to be this bad, and it does a very convincing job. Let's just have a quick listen.
So you just wait here like a deer.
You want me to wait?
That's right. Just sit tight.
Let's face it, they don't make them like they used to, at least not in this style. When it comes to retro visuals, rarely do developers dare aspire for the early PlayStation 1 era. Why? Well, it frankly looks terrible due to the baby steps the industry was taking in 3D at that time. But people of a certain age, including myself, often have a very strong case of nostalgia when it comes to how they looked, and I think with games like Vaccine also taking the bold step to pull on the nostalgia, maybe a new retro era is coming. Back in 1995 does honestly look like it's from 1995. Plonk this game on an old CRT and pretty much everyone would be convinced that it was of the time. Texture warping all over the place. It's horrendous and delicious at the same time. While there are many games to point fingers at and call its inspiration, it really brings back Silent Hill more than anything. The environments are real physical objects rather than the pre-rendered backgrounds of Resident Evil. As I'm sure you've seen, there is a CRT filter to go over the game which is initially enabled. I played for a while with it, but after a few minutes I really couldn't take it anymore and I had to switch it off. It's just too overboard, and funnily enough, that's a soft setting. There's an even crazier one which I'm sure would make the game impossible to play. The game runs smoothly enough as you would expect, and playing in handheld mode doesn't make a difference, of course. If you're interested in file size, you'll be surprised to hear that back in 1995 complements its thin content with a file size of less than 90 megabytes. If you're running low on space, don't worry about this title. Looking at value, back in 1995 will cost you $9.99 on the UK, US, and European eShops in their respective currencies. Obviously those figures aren't quite equal, but it could be worse. Anyways, back in 1995, is it worth that price? Well, no it's not. I think for an hour's worth of average gameplay born from an interesting idea, it's not worth that current starting price, unfortunately. It's banking on the fact that people will be nostalgic for this era, but for me, that only goes so far, even though I loved the games that inspired this one. If it was a more substantial experience, I would say sure, but this is more experimental or proof of concept rather than what I would consider a full fat game. In my opinion, wait for 50% off minimum, preferably more. Now saying that, we do have our hands on an extra code for back in 1995. Yes, we're going to give it away to one of you guys. Entry is very simple. Similar to our last giveaway of Gunlord X, over on Twitter there's a currently unmade tweet in which you just have to follow me at SoWhatAboutGame and the publisher Ratalaika, and also retweet that tweet. Obviously, I can't show it to you because I haven't made it yet, but after you've finished watching the video, head over to my Twitter page and I'm sure you'll see it right there waiting for you. Only open for the first 24 hours, so don't miss out. The early bird catches the worm. Winners will be announced and contacted on Twitter. Okay, into my final thoughts on back in 1995. I know it's been a short review, but it is a very short game, and there's not a whole lot to say about it. So yeah, overall, it saddens me to say, but back in 1995 is not a good game, as you may have guessed from my words already. It has one gimmick, and that is its art style, which is admittedly very cool, but not enough to stop me wishing for something far more substantial. It's more like a proof of concept rather than an actual complete game. If you're looking for a bit of nostalgia, it may be worth a shot, but in comparison to the titles that inspired it, the gameplay, the story, and content are egregiously absent. It has good intentions, of that I am sure. The developer is very sincere about this game, but if you're looking for a retro survival horror experience, this is not the place, at least not for the starting price. A sadly mediocre 5 out of 10. Now, if you are looking for a retro-inspired horror game, also from the mid-90s, then I suggest you check our review of Vaccine. It has kind of the same heart, but with a more action roguelike experience, and I personally enjoyed it, so check out that review from Juan. He didn't like it as much as I did, but you know, Go check it out, maybe it's something that you might fancy. I'll see you guys over there, take care.